So this is the first of the few categories which you just require the verbosity as an argument, and this will replace the verbosity to this verbosity of the targeted class or component. So there is a next category in which you will have two arguments. The argument number one will be ID, and the argument number two will be the verbosity that you want to take into effect for that particular ID. So I will recommend writing that particular uh, verbosity override type inside the other phase, which is not top down, and I will tell you why. So first, I will begin with writing any other phase. Let's say the start of simulation phase. So the second type will have two arguments. The first argument will be ID, and second argument will be the targeted verbosity. So what it basically does. So it basically replaces the verbosity level or changes the verbosity threshold for only the targeted ID which is mentioned inside the argument. And to write that, you just have to write set report ID verbosity. And here, just remember, you don't write set report verbosity level. So like here in this category, for both the hierarchy one and the non-hierarchy one, you have to write level underscore level at the end. But here you are not required to write underscore level. So you should not write underscore level here. So this concludes our method, and let's begin with the ID. So for ID, let's say let's change the verbosity threshold of any of the uh, let's target the driver class only. So for the driver class, we have one UVM info macro, and the verbosity threshold for that macro is UVM high. So what I will do, I will just comment this one out. So like the level ones, you have two variant. The one variant is the regular ID verbosity, and the second variant is the hierarchy. So hierarchy will, like the previous one, get applied to all the classes or objects or components which are down the hierarchy, and UVM test is the upmost hierarchy, and the second hierarchy if you also consider UVM root. So what is the ID of the driver class? It is get type name, so it will return the name of the class as an ID, so it should be driver. So let's write driver. So since the default verbosity threshold is UVM medium, if we do not use this particular override, the info message inside the UVM driver should not get print. But since we are targeting that particular ID, the info message will get print. So we will change the verbosity threshold for that particular class to UVM high. Just to confirm, yes. So the verbosity threshold is UVM high. Now it should get print. So let's compile the top level module. Okay, it is compiled. So let's run the top level module. So as you can see it right here that all the info messages from the driver component is getting printed, even though uh, I have changed the verbosity threshold for this UVM messages to UVM high, and it is because of my ID verbosity override method, which is only targeting the particular UVM info message which has the driver ID. So just to prove this that this is getting worked, uh, what I will do, I will change the UVM info for the monitor. Here I will change the verbosity of UVM info inside the monitor to UVM high. Now, as per the definition, it is it is getting over the default threshold of UVM medium, and in my top test class, I have only changed the verbosity threshold for all the UVM messages which have an ID of driver. So, by this meaning, the UVM info inside the monitor should not get printed. Let's find out. So this is my previous simulation run. You can see it right here that right after the driver UVM info, we can see the monitor UVM info. And just to confirm, I have already commented out the previous uh, override method, which only requires uh, you to write the targeted verbosity as an argument. So let's save the code and let's compile the top level again. I'm running the simulation. So as you can see it in the summary that we have no info or any macros from the monitor. So let's check uh, the transactions. So here you can see in the second sequence, we are seeing the UVM info of the sequence, then of the driver. Then here we are supposed to see the UVM info macro message of the monitor, but it is getting skipped because the verbosity is UVM high for that UVM info, and we haven't override the threshold for UVM monitor. So that just confirms that it is working correctly. So here I will tell you why you should not use it inside the build phase. So let's just comment this. Let's just copy this. and comment this out and use this inside the build phase like we did with the regular verbosity override method, the level ones. So let's find out what will happen. So as per the definition, it should change the threshold of the driver component to UVM high. But let's see whether the message will get print or not. I am compiling the top level again. Let's run the simulation. As you can see it right here that we have only two UVM infos. The one is from the sequence class and the other one is from the scoreboard class. And specifically, there are two UVM info macros from scoreboard. The other one is for the checker. So for UVM monitor, it is quite obvious. We didn't apply any override method and the verbosity for the UVM info inside the monitor is high. But for the UVM driver, even though we applied the verbosity right here for all the macros which have an ID of driver, but still it is not getting printed. So why is this happening? So it is because we are using this particular override method inside the build phase. And build phase is top down, which means first the object of UVM test will be created. Then so so basically it means that the build phase of the UVM test or the test class will execute first before any other subclasses or subcomponents. So by the time this message gets executed, there is no driver class, there is no object of driver class at all. So this particular build phase executes at here when the object of UVM test is created. So it executes here. So in this particular time, there is no object of driver, scoreboard, monitor, etc. So right after this only, we have environment and scoreboard, and I should say sequence. Then right after that, we have agent and scoreboard. And then right after that, inside the agent, we have driver and monitor and even sequencer. So since build phase is top down and it is the very first thing in the UVM phase that will get executed, so by the time we reach and execute this particular override method, we did not find any of the UVM info macro that has an ID of driver because there is no object of driver till here. So that's why it is recommended for this such kind of specific override methods to be used inside the other build time phases, not build time, the build phases, uh, because when we use start of simulation phase, we have already created the objects of UVM driver or any other subcomponents or sub-objects. So that's why it is better to use any other override methods inside the start of simulation phase. So I will comment this out. So this where the level ones, because they have level in the end, and they have two variant. One is the non-hierarchy one and one is the hierarchy one, and both of them supports only one argument, that is the targeted verbosity. And the second category which I have categorized is the ID one, ID and verbosity, and they have two arguments: the targeted ID, for which you want to change the verbosity threshold, and the targeted verbosity threshold, to which you want to change the verbosity. So like the level ones, the set ID verbosity have two variants, the hierarchy one and the non-hierarchy one. So here, if we use the non-hierarchy one and we target the driver ID, so it will not work, because the non-hierarchy one are limited to the class which that particular override method is described. So it will only get applied to the UVM test, and the classes which extends or inherits the this particular class, basically the child class. So I can still specifically point out a particular verbosity, and I can do this, I mean a particular class, and I can do this by referencing each class hierarchically. So here we have two nested class, and the first class is environment. So I will point out to environment, and inside environment we have the handle of the agent class here, which goes by A. So I will point to A. Inside agent, of course, we have the instantiations or the handles of the driver class here, and it goes by D in our environment. So by this way, even though I am not using the hierarchy variant, I will still make it work, because it is right now pointing towards the driver object, sorry, driver component, and it will only work for the driver component. So let's find out. I'm saving the code, and we right now we don't have any other override methods active. All are commented out. I will compile the top level. I will simulate the top level. So as you can see it right here that it did work. So by using the hierarchical reference, we pointed towards the driver class, and even though it was not an hierarchy variant of the verbosity override, it did work. We have all the driver UVM infos of the driver right here. So since we are done with this, let's move on to the final category, which have three arguments. And those three arguments are severity, and the second argument is ID, and the third argument is verbosity. So for the severity, I will discuss more about in details. Just try to understand that uh, every UVM macro has some kind of severity associated to it, and to that severity, there is a simulation action. So right now, all the UVM info macros have UVM info severity. Similarly, all the UVM warning macro has UVM warning severity. So by this way, you are defining the severity, and this particular method will only target that particular severity. So right now, our only concern is to target all the UVM info macro. So here we will always use UVM info. So the method is pretty similar. It does not have the level at the end, and it is written like this: set severity report, set report severity ID verbosity. And like I have already told you, there are three arguments. The first argument should be the UVM severity, and since we are targeting the UVM info message, the severity should be UVM info. And the second message should be the ID, and since we have already written an override method for the driver, let's focus on the monitor. I will recall it again that for the monitor, we have replaced the verbosity threshold of the UVM info as UVM high. So I want to print this particular UVM info of the monitor. So it should be monitor. And the third argument is the targeted verbosity threshold. Let's change it to UVM full. UVM full is the next level to UVM high, so it will work anyways. So still it will not work, and like any other categories, it also have the hierarchy variant, so I will use the hierarchy variant. Now it is supposed to work, and the only difference is that we have three arguments, and the first argument is the severity. So let's go ahead and compile the code. Let's run the simulation. So as you can see it right here that it is getting affected, and all the monitor messages which were not getting printed earlier are now getting printed. You can see it right here that for each of the transaction we have our UVM info of the monitor right here. even though the verbosity threshold for these monitors are UVM high. And like this, we have one non-hierarchical variant, and it can be used to target certain class. So let's move on to different class. Uh, let's target scoreboard. So here inside the scoreboard, we have two UVM info messages. The one is for the transaction and the other one is for the checker, confirm that the test has been passed. So we will change the verbosity of the UVM info for the transaction to be UVM low. So still the default verbosity level is UVM medium. So we will set the verbosity level for this particular uh, component to be UVM none so that this message will not get printed. So here we will target that particular class. So right now we are in the test and the class down the hierarchy to test is UVM environment. So first we will target UVM environment, and after that inside the environment we have the handle of the scoreboard, and we want this override take into effect for the UVM scoreboard. And yes, want the threshold to be UVM none. So let's see whether it is working or not. Okay, it is not getting work. So let's find out the reason why is this happening. Okay, we can see it right here that I did not change the ID. So the ID of the scoreboard class should be scoreboard. Now it should work. So as you can see it right here that we are getting only one UVM info macro printed from the scoreboard. That is the uh, UVM info for the checker, and the other UVM info which is supposed to be printed right here is not getting printed. It is because we have changed, and or we should say we have decremented the verbosity threshold level for that particular UVM info message. So for all the UVM info, so before the filter, we were getting two UVM info from the scoreboard component, and right now after the filter, we are getting only one. So that are all the categories of the verbosity overrides. Other than that, we have other means of overriding the verbosity, and that is during the runtime, and it could be done through the command line interface, and you could also write that inside your run.to file, which I would recommend. So before that, let's compare the hierarchy of this overrides method. What uh, if I have uh, two override methods and both of them are targeting the same component or object? So which one will take precedence over the other one? Let's find out. So for this example, what I will do, I will pick this one, and I will write it right after this. So this should take into effect for all the hierarchies, and it is UVM debug. So it will just raise the threshold to the value of 600, and all the UVM info message are supposed to get printed. So right above this, we have an verbosity override for the scoreboard, in which we are replacing the verbosity threshold to UVM none, and because of that, one of the message inside the UVM scoreboard is not getting printed. So since we are writing this verbosity override after this, shouldn't it take precedence over this? It will not. And the reason is because the one which have IDs or severities mentioned inside them have higher level of priority as compared to the level ones. So regardless of the order of this particular verbosity override, this one will always take precedence over this one. So right now, let's focus for the scoreboard class. This is targeting the scoreboard class because it is targeting all the classes down the hierarchy from the UVM test, and this one is specifically targeting the scoreboard class. Even though this statement this statement is written after the above one, the above one will take priority because it is a specialized one. It has more than one argument. So all the override methods which have the arguments of ID or the severity and ID will take precedence over the level ones. So let's find out. So as per my assumptions, the scoreboard, the particular UVM info inside the scoreboard will still not get printed, even though we have risen up the verbosity threshold later. So let's compile the top level again. Okay, we have one error. Let's see. Uh, in the line number 40, this is the line number 40. Okay, so while highlighting the text, I made some typos. It should be set report, severity, ID, verbosity. Now it should work, probably. Okay, it did not work. Okay, I still have one typo. My god. Okay, it worked. Seriously, while highlighting the override methods, I have made lots of typos. So here it is, that reports severity. I don't know how it happened. That report severity ID, verbosity hierarchy. Okay, now it should be fine. Let's check the other one just in case. Okay, and now I am positive. As you can see it right here that that particular UVM info of the scoreboard is not getting printed. And I am talking about this one. So it just proves that this particular this particular override method is still taking into effect and it is still working regardless of whatever you wrote. So let us now discuss about the priority between the other methods. So as we can already see that this one is more specific and it will have higher priority over the level one, and same goes for the ID one. The ID one will also have higher priority over the level one. So this one have the lowest priority. So what about if we compare this, if we compare the severity ID verbosity to ID verbosity? So since the severity ID verbosity is more specific, it should have higher priority over the ID verbosity one. So let's prove this. So I will refer to the same class, and this time I will use the severity, the ID and verbosity one. This should have two arguments. The first argument will be the ID itself, and the second argument should be the targeted verbosity threshold. And for us, for to make it possible to print that particular UVM info, I will raise the verbosity threshold to UVM cube. So both of them are targeting to the same scoreboard object, or I should say component. And as I have said, even though this is mentioned later inside the code, this one will take priority because it is more specific. It is also including severity as an argument. So let's find out. So according to this, that particular UVM info message for the transaction inside the scoreboard should still not get printed. So as you can see it right here that only the checkers UVM info macro is getting printed and that particular is not getting printed. So even though this particular override is described after this one, it is still not as much specific as this one. So for that particular reason, this will take precedence over this one. So what happens if we are writing two same categories? Let's say here also I will be writing uh, the severity one, and we will also add UVM severity. So what about this two? So as per the definition, uh, the later one should take precedence over the previous one if both of them are of same type. So both of them have three arguments: the severity, the ID, and finally the verbosity. Since this one should take precedence over this one, it should rise up the default threshold for that particular component to UVM debug. And that particular message inside the scoreboard should get printed this time. So let's find out. So right now we are having only one message printed, and after that we will have two message getting printed. The other one will be right here. Just want to ensure that the code is saved. Let's combine the top level. So as you can see it right here that this is getting printed for every transaction. So we have two UVM macro for every transaction for the scoreboard component. So this is all about the hierarchy between different override methods. When the override methods become more specific, they should take precedence over the not so specific ones. And when we are comparing the overrides between same uh, two same specific levels, the later one will take precedence over the former one. So that's all about all the verbosity methods that you can use, and it is a good practice that you should use these verbosity methods in other other function, other phase, other than the build phase. So other than this, we have other means of overriding the verbosity, which could be done from the runtime or inside the command line, which I will discuss in the next part. Thank you.